Hi everyone. Good evening. Welcome to today's event. Today's event is really exciting. I'm personally really excited for it. So it's also our first event of the entire year. So very exciting. We have a lot of good energy. So welcome everyone. I will start off with I believe most of you already know what TIE is and what we do. But for anyone who's new here, I will just start off with a really brief introduction. Just a really brief introduction without taking too much time. In a nutshell, TIE is an organization that fosters entrepreneurship globally. What started as a small gathering in Silicon Valley in 1992 has turned into more than 60 chapters in 15 countries. So how TIE functions is basically, it functions on 5 main pillars. The 5 pillars being mentoring, networking, education, funding, and incubation. So while TIE does have a global reach, we make sure each chapter gets to focus on a local ecosystem. There are some great programs that we run for all kinds of entrepreneurs, being the mentorship program. We have the TIE Women program, the TIE University program, which today's event is brought to you by, and we have the TIE Hustle, TIE Wellness, and also TIE Legal series. TIE Dubai is the Middle East chapter of TIE, and it's based in Dubai Internet City, and it has been around for more than 18 years now. The easiest way to be a part of our community and to get to know all about our events and programs that we run is by liking us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can find us as TIE Dubai everywhere. I would also like to acknowledge and thank all of TIE Dubai's sponsors and partners who continually support us in bringing more to you. Before we move on to our event today, I would like to briefly hand over to Vivek Chaudhary, our co-chair of the TIE University MENA program, to introduce the TIE University Pitch Competition. Vivek, handing over to you.
Thank you, Fiza. Welcome, everybody. It's actually a very special day today for TIE University because today we are officially launching our TIE University MENA competition for the year 2022. The vision for TIE University and the mission for TIE University is to foster entrepreneurship amongst college students. And we are very happy with this objective in mind. We hold, I would say, more than a pitch competition every year. We are into the 3rd year this year. The last 2 years have been a roaring success for us. The key highlights of this competition are that all university and college students from across the MENA region can apply. If they have a startup idea, they can apply to this program. You see the link for the application down on this flyer, www.dubai.tie.org. Please get onto that, make an application. When I say it's more than really a pitch competition, we ensure that you don't only just sort of apply and make a pitch. TIE University gives you access to mentoring, coaching, workshops, clinics on all subjects related to a startup, be it legal, marketing, digital, scaling up, financing. And so it's a complete ecosystem. And the best part of it is that the winner from the MENA region would go to the global chapter of TIE, will fly to the global chapter of TIE in Silicon Valley and get a chance to present their pitch in a global forum in Silicon Valley. There are prizes up for grabs here. As you can see, that one has a chance to win up to about $100,000 of prizes, which can go a long way in starting a company or you're making your idea come to fruition. The timelines are 13th of Feb is the last date for putting in your application. Please make a note of that. More details can be found on the website. And then the last date and the final competition for TIE Dubai would be in end of February, and then end of March would be the finals in Silicon Valley. Please spread the word out within your ecosystem. Please spread the word out within your communities, with your students, with college students that you know of, universities that you know of. We are approaching universities ourselves, and we hope to have a very, very active participation this year. So I look forward to having all these interesting ideas make their pitches during this year's competition. Thank you very much, and I hand over back to Fiza for the program.
Thank you so much, Vivek. That was amazing to hear. I will also put the link to go and apply in the chat box. So moving on to the event for today, very pleased to hand over to our moderator, Feroz Sanaulla. Feroz, handing over to you.
Thank you very much, Fiza, and thank you for everybody who's joining us today. My name is Feroz Sanaulla, and I'm a partner with Roland Berger Consultants. We're a German company, however global. We've got about 50 offices globally. Around 2,700 people and about 250 partners. What do I focus on? I focus on looking at looking through the lens of the customer, and how does a customer navigate their life within various sectors. And as you know, financial services, consumer goods and services, telecommunications, in many ways are merging. And the way they're merging is around customer experiences. So today I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about that. My career spans many years. I started in the United States with Intel Corporation. I lived my life through Intel over many years and ended up being a VC for Intel Capital. Then I left and became an entrepreneur for a couple of years. When I found out about TIE, joined them. And from there on, graduated and became a partner in a well-known consulting firm. And we service clients, governments, and many private sector organizations. So I'll pass you on to Elena, who will introduce herself, and then she'll present a little bit of pages on design thinking, and then we'll have a debate. So over to you, Elena.
Thank you. Good to be here, everyone. Hi. So quick introduction about myself. I actually come from background of higher education and learning, having spent several years working in different institutions and organizations around the US as well as the Middle East. I've been in Dubai since 2014. In 2019, I've made the leap and started a company with a co-founder of mine, Ivan Palomino, where we focus on helping organizations drive performance in their employees using behavior science and neuroscience and technology to really help people make changes that stick. So we're based in Dubai. For me, it was a hobby that turned into a career and a business. We very much apply design thinking and agile approach in our business. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that we're doing. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. So, and by the way, Feroz and I did not mean to match today. It happened by accident. We just both showed up wearing white color shirts. So we're aligned. So the way it's going to go, guys, is I want to show you just a quick few slides to give us an idea of what is design thinking. So wherever you are in terms of your knowledge of design thinking, it's either going to be a refresher or it's going to be something new to you that you're going to be able to apply in your work, career, and business. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up presentation. While I do that, I would like for you to drop us in the chat just a yes or no. Have you had experience with design thinking? Just a yes or no answer if you had experience while I pull up the presentation. So using the chat box. We want to make it as engaging as possible. This is for you guys, so feel free to ask your questions throughout the session. All right, and I see some, let me pull up the chat. So we have a mix, yes, no. So we have quite a mix of answers. Beautiful. So for those of you who have answered yes, you're hopefully going to learn a little bit more new information. For those of you who have never heard of design thinking, never had experience with it, it's going to be a nice little tool and skill that you are going to take away today. All right. So just to keep in mind, guys, design thinking is a huge topic. All right. So when we're talking about being agile and creative in our organization. So again, no matter where you are, so if you are an entrepreneur looking to take your business to the next level, or maybe you're just starting off, or whether you are a career person who's looking to perhaps apply design thinking in their work, or maybe you're a student who's simply just looking to learn something new. Design thinking is truly for everybody, all right? But this topic is humongous, as I said. So my objective here today, and between Feroz and I, is to create a little bit of awareness about what it is, raise some thoughts about it and curiosity for you to then take and do further research on your own. And of course, coming from various backgrounds, Feroz and I can offer some of our inputs and experiences with design thinking. But let us go ahead and set the scene just a little bit. Why do we even care about being agile? All right, why do we care about being creative and innovative? So a recent report that was done by Deloitte, senior executives were asked, what are the most important actions that are needed to truly transform the way that we work in our organization? Because change is inevitable and it's going to happen. So how do we what are the skills and tools we need to have to make that change effective? And so some of the answers that you see here, just an overview, it's really just building an organization, a business that celebrates growth, adaptability, resilience, building a workforce that is capable of upskilling and reskilling and mobility. All of these topics, all of these top answers that they give us are actually have to do with us being able to be agile, for us being able to be curious and creative in the way that we work. So that is why there's a lot of talk about applying agile methodologies and design thinking in our work. Furthermore, agility, essentially, if some of you are not familiar with it, is our ability to move quickly and easily in response to change or challenge. And in the last couple of years, we have all experienced change of challenge, and we saw many companies either fell apart through the changes that happened to us as a society over the last since 2020, or those that really were able to quickly overcome challenges and adapt to the new working way. When it comes to really the skill sets for the future, again, no matter who you are, some of the top skills that are important for us moving forward in 2025. So this is a report done by World Economic Forum. These are the skills that are top that are needed. A lot of this you see are around critical thinking, around creativity, around resilience, around complex problem solving. And again, why am I talking about these skills? Because that is essentially about being agile. That is essentially about creating something, coming up with new ideas. And that is what design thinking helps with. All right. So there's a lot of talk about it, and sometimes it's not clear, but I hope that by looking at this, you understand that the future truly belongs to those that are able to learn and practice continuously different skills and creating processes around that. All right. So what is design thinking? Design thinking is really a human-centered approach. And this is the most important part of this, a human-centered approach. And we're going to find out why throughout this presentation. It's really our way to innovate that is really anchored around customer needs, all right? Rapidly prototyping, generating creative ideas to transform our products, services, processes, organizations, and maybe even careers. As we go through this, you will realize quickly that design thinking can be applied to truly anything you want to try. It's just reality is just understanding what is it that you want to improve on and creating different ideas to generate and then testing those ideas. So let's move on real quick to the agile process or the design thinking process. So I'm going to go into each one and then I'm going to give examples as well. So to keep it quite simple, it's really just about three different areas. First, emphasizing, second, explore, and executing. What does that mean? Emphasizing. This is the most important part of this process. It is putting your customer at the center of everything that you do. It is about being observant, about listening and learning from your customer. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they start a business or when they're looking to change a product or a service, they start coming up with their own ideas of what they think should be done, instead of actually asking the customer, what would they like to see? So listening is a very important part of this first step, because if you don't determine the problem that you're actually working with, if you don't determine what is the actual problem we're addressing, it's very difficult to then come up with the right solutions. You might come up with the right solutions, but you're going to quickly realize that those are not the right ones because you were addressing the wrong problem. So emphasizing and getting this feedback from the customer is essential. I'm going to give you guys an example to the end, so not to worry. So exploring, the next step of this process is exploring. What does that mean? We have a problem. What are the potential ideas that we can generate to create solutions to this problem? This is where the more the better. So this is where you go into quantity versus quality. This is where you just go into generating as many ideas as possible to come up with creative things to hopefully create the solutions. All right. Are you going to be able to use all of those ideas? Not necessarily. But one thing to keep in mind, as you're generating these ideas, some of them you're going to take and execute on and prototype on. Some of them are going to be put to the side, but don't get rid of those here. Don't get rid of those ideas that were generated, because you might come back to them later on and they might be useful. And the idea of spending time on this part in particular and to generate as many ideas as possible is because usually the first idea is not going to be your best idea. All right. And again, keep in mind that all ideas are usually useful in some capacity. It really depends on what's the problem that you're solving. All right. And then the execution. The execution part is not just blindly running and putting full effort into executing on the ideas that you've selected. Maybe you took 2 or 3 ideas out of 10 or 15 that were generated. Execution is about how can you run small, tiny experiments with your customer, for example, on whether this idea that you put forward is going to work. So the mistake that a lot of people make here is that they go full on with an idea and they spend a lot of money and resources to make it happen. And agile thinking, design thinking teaches us saying, why do we have to go full on? Why can't we just experiment? Because it's going to reduce our cost and it's going to give us an indication whether we should invest full on in executing on this idea as we believe it might transform our product. All right. And it allows you to learn from failure. Let me go and give you a couple of examples. All right. So starting with, let's say an example, let's say you want to open up a Mexican restaurant. I have an idea. I want to start a Mexican restaurant. All right. That's your idea. You identified some idea. Next step, of course, once we identify something, is to emphasize. We said that that's one of the most important things, right? It's great that you want to open a Mexican restaurant. I mean, think about how many people want to open up a restaurant or a bakery or a coffee shop or start an online business. Everybody has ideas, and those are great. But is your idea needed? Do people want a Mexican restaurant? Right? So this is where you go to emphasize. That's the most important step of this is, do people actually want to spend money on a Mexican restaurant? Do people like it? Do they dislike it? Where do they go right now? Is there a Mexican restaurant in your area where people go? What do people think about Mexico? Right? In Dubai, this is where you go into getting more information. In Dubai, for example, 25 to 45 feels that there's no % of people, let's say they feel that there's no genuine Mexican restaurant in Dubai, right? That could be a good thing for you, but is there no good Mexican restaurant in Dubai because there just isn't a good one, or because it's just not a good idea to have a Mexican restaurant, hence why we don't have one, right? So what is really the issue here? So this is where you have to really dig deeper with the customer. Then you go into getting some ideas. All right, so you're creating some ideas. How can you launch a business to test this idea? Are you going to go and open up a Mexican restaurant in Dubai Mall? You're going to rent out the venue. You're going to go through all the process of getting approvals, and you're going to go and just spend all that money? No, why would you? That's not a smart move, because you haven't proven the concept of Mexican restaurant is a great idea. So this is where you can say, should I just do a delivery service? Should I just try with a delivery service, right? Should I do street food style with a little van outside on, I don't know, Kite Beach or some Corniche area? Should I just do a quick little tester? Because if I'm going to get a lot of customers from this little a van that I'm going to open up with, the kitchen, I forgot what they're called, but you guys get the idea. Those little, what are they called? The little vans, you see at the beach. If any of you are based in the UAE on Kite Beach, they have these little vans and they food trucks. That's what they're called, food trucks. So the food trucks. So can you do it in a sample of a food truck and see if it will actually inspire people to buy Mexican food? Then that might actually prove that this idea is good. So the point here is to not go full on with your idea, not spend and invest a lot of money in it, but to experiment in a small way. And finally, how are you going to prototype it? So wonderful, you have an idea, you're going to do a food truck. So how are you going to prototype? Maybe just do a landing page. How often do you see people when they start a business, guys, and first thing they do is we're going to print business cards, we're going to print t-shirts, we're going to put branding, we're going to start marketing, we're going to hire a team, we're going to hire a salesperson. They spend a lot of money and resources on a concept that has not been proven yet. And so design thinking encourages you to say, let's do a small prototype. All right. Once you've identified, I'm going to do a food truck, and that's what it's going to do, for example. Or you're going to say, you know what, maybe I'm just going to do it online and I'm just going to do deliveries. So whichever one you want to try, right? And finally, then you evaluate after some time, did it generate traffic? Did you make money from it? What are the lessons you can learn from it? Is it feasible to open up a Mexican restaurant? Should you just stick with online delivery or maybe just a food truck to start with? And then you go back through the process. If it worked, beautiful. Then you actually go into more in depth. If it didn't work, then maybe you need to revisit your idea. And maybe you say, maybe a Mexican restaurant is not the best idea for me to start. All right. So let me just see your comments, make sure there's no questions. Nope. Okay. All right. Now I wanted to show you guys a couple of examples, and then Feroz is going to share his thoughts with us. So I hope that's pretty clear. Feel free to drop questions, but I'm also going to give you an example of companies that we very well know that have applied design thinking. So of course, many of you know Starbucks, whether you like Starbucks or not, it's okay, but Starbucks is a known brand. As I'm going through these examples, I want you guys to look at the common theme of these applications of design thinking. All right. Example number one, Starbucks, we know this, food and beverage company, of course, that was going through a drop in sales. So their sales just tanked a few years ago. They had poor margins, etc. So what Starbucks decided to do is they decided to interview hundreds of customers to better understand, what do customers expect from coffee shops? What do they want from coffee shops? Why aren't they staying? Why aren't they spending time in a coffee shop? And what they've learned after emphasizing, right, that's that important step, after emphasizing with their audience, what they've learned is that customers actually wanted a atmosphere that provided a sense for belonging and relaxation. And if you think about it, usually when you go to Starbucks, who do you see? People sitting by themselves. And that is what they discovered. They said, people come to work at Starbucks. That is what Starbucks is known for, to come and work there. So they've designed circle tables. All they did was just change the shape of their tables so that people who come and work on their own feel more comfortable. It makes them more comfortable. So they did these surveys about tables and atmosphere and seating, and they realized that's what customers want. It was that simple, is that people just wanted to feel a little bit more comfortable when they're sitting there alone and less self-conscious. And that circle table, for some reason, did the trick. They wouldn't have known that unless they actually talked to the customer. Nike, again, whether you like the brand or not, Nike was finding it difficult to become a strong brand again among the community that skateboards, on the board, skateboarding. So they struggled to really get this support to be able to sell the shoes and the merchandise associated with skateboarding. So then they decided that to engage skateboarders in the design process, again, they took a focus group of people who are their customers, which is skateboarders in this case, and they've asked them to try to understand the needs and the aspirations of the skateboard community. And so what they've learned is that skaters actually wanted a specific shoe that had a specific feel to it, that had a specific sole at the bottom of it, etc. And so they've came up with the Nike SB line of shoes, which is what you see, that is predominantly bought by skateboarders. So, and a final example is GE Healthcare. And this is a really, really interesting one. So GE, of course, has an MRI scanner where they do MRI scans, and generally is not a pleasant experience. If anybody's been inside an MRI, you know it is miserable. But imagine for children. For children, it is very scary. And for years and years, they would have to, of course, use the regular MRI machine and put kids through this. And the kids would cry, they would have anxiety attacks, etc. So then they decided, okay, why don't we include the children in understanding what is so scary about the MRI machine? Before, they would only talk to educators and doctors and parents. They never thought about talking to the children. And then they said, let's ask the children. And what the children told them is that the machine looks like a scary monster. So and then they asked the children, what would make it more comfortable? And they started experimenting with different styles until they made it into a ship, which is what you see on the left-hand side here. So by speaking with the children, they realized that actually we can make it less stressful for them by making it fun. And so they've redesigned this MRI machine to look like a little ship. And now kids are actually more excited to go in there. So before that, approximately 80% of children had to be sedated. They had to be put to sleep basically in order to do the MRI. After they did this little design, only 10% of children. So that's a 70% drop of just being able to understand what do the children want. And in this case, the children were their customers. So what is the main takeaway from these examples, guys? What did you get away from this? What is the main theme here? What did these companies do? You can use the chat box to answer. Somebody said, yeah, people centricity, focus on a customer, listen to customers. Absolutely. So if you take away anything from this, is emphasizing with your user. All right, whether you're launching a business, you're revamping a product, you're creating a new service, focusing on the customer is one of the most essential steps in the design thinking process. And even for some of you who are looking maybe for a career change, I told you can apply this in your career. If you're looking for a career change, your customer is that future company. What do they look for? What do they want from their candidates, right? And how can you experiment in trying a new career? You can also do it in small ways and prototype by volunteering, by doing part-time work, by being a freelancer to prototype that. So I hope what you took away is that design thinking truly is for everybody and putting the customer first, which is what many of you have answered in the chat. That is my time. Feroz, thoughts, questions, let's debate.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for your time. And I was just looking at some of the chats and people participating, and the word empathy comes to mind, right? And what is empathy? And let me talk a little bit more, less practical, more academic, because when we do our thinking, we look at sectors and we look at journeys in those sectors. So let me cover the three sectors I talked about. The first one let's cover is retail. Retail has been disrupted by e-commerce, as we all know, and more things are becoming omnichannel. What does omnichannel really mean? Omnichannel really means the ability to serve your customer anytime, anywhere, with any channel available, right? So gone are those days when you would go to a shop, look at something, buy it, put it in your bag, and go to the till, purchase it, and bring it home. Now, the digitally native retailers start the journey from a customer in mind and says, it doesn't matter where the customer comes from, where they go, how they navigate. The end point is that they need to have a product that they can take home. And how we deliver it, how the supply chain works should be seamless and very, very joined in terms of its thinking. How did they arrive to this? Number one is that technology was available. Number two was that customers demanded it. And number three is that it bottom line increased their sales, right? So if you go to an old school retailer who still is in a single shopping mall pushing product versus a digitally native brand like Allbirds or Everlane or others, they don't even think of stores. They think of customers. So that's how retail thinking has worked. Let's look at telecommunications. In telecommunications today, the most opaque thing is pricing, right? From a customer standpoint, it is the most horrible experience you will ever have. Because, oh, you're going to buy this bundle or that bundle, or should I put a phone attached to it, or should I put some minutes? Or do you want to do pay as you go? Do you want to do postpaid? Why make life complicated? And the reason telcos are suffering and how VoIP has taken over and they will be disrupted in voice is because who cares? Ultimately, I need to talk to Elena. How I talk to her doesn't matter. Whether I use WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, phone call, email, chat, doesn't make a difference. I just need to get my point across to her and she needs to get her point across to me. So if you step back and see what customer centricity means, you realize that telcos may not exist because there may be no need for them, because ultimately our fundamental need of communication will be satisfied by many, many means and not just the telecommunication world. And let's look at banking. In banking, they sell products. Oh, do you want to be a wealth management piece? Do you want to do savings? Do you want to do checking? Do you want to invest your money? Do you want to get a loan? Why do we look at life in a disjointed manner? One day I want to buy a car, tomorrow I want to buy a house, and day after tomorrow I want to send my mother some money, right? And all of that should happen seamlessly because it's my world, it's my money. So banks are feeling the pressure because when super apps have come along, they've changed the mindset and said, you know what? It's one experience for all. It doesn't matter what you do, it's your money. And you are the boss of that money and you can do whatever you want with it. I don't prescribe you what to do with it, right? I give you guidance. So design thinking has changed disruption and it's changed these large segments into rethinking their own position. And the reason they're getting disrupted is because they forgot one major issue. They forgot that they had customers, right? And when you forget that you have customers, the result of it is in long term going to be very, very bad. And so from a very natural human-centric way, if we look back and say as entrepreneurs, how we will disrupt our world and how we will design our new things, we always should start with the empathy and with the point of the customer in mind, and then develop and iterate along those lines. You asked a question around fashion, and I do a lot of work in fashion and retail and luxury. And one thing I will tell you is that companies like Zappos, companies like Lululemon, companies like Costco, who are also old box suppliers, are rethinking consumers navigating through their stores, consumers buying shoes online and getting the supply chain tack perfect, meaning the shoes follow the customers, not the other way around, right? Meaning if you are in San Francisco, you get your shoes. And if you that day decide to go to South San Francisco, you get your shoes. Why? Because they find you, right? Athleisure, which was never a segment, Lululemon came in and changed it. Women bought it in droves. And the reason for that is because they listened to what the women wanted when they wanted to go and do the yoga or go exercise, right? All of that came from the concept of design thinking. So every step of the way, as we kind of share these thoughts with you, keep in mind that if you start with the first premise, which is what do customers want? And even if you don't ask that questions, ask yourself, what do you want? You are a customer, right? And if you ask yourself what you want, would you not like to be treated exactly the same way, whether you have a customer or not? And then apply that thinking across to the other side, you will realize that there are many opportunities in this world to be able to capture. So that's what we do as consultants. We look at these large organizations and explain to them how to move away from their traditional thinking and move towards more agile, innovative thinking, and to reintroduce the concept of customer first and customer centricity. So these are some thoughts that I have, Elena. I'd love for you to kind of expound on that a little bit, or even share some additional thoughts.
Sure. Well, actually, I think there's a couple of questions that are quite relevant to this discussion. A couple of you asked, what do customers want? How do we find out if sometimes even we have two people ask, what happens when the customer doesn't know what he really wants, specifically forward thinking? Sometimes they don't know what they want. How can you fall into the trap of groupthink, which might actually hold you back? So this is where it's from experience, in my perspective, and Feroz, maybe you have something different as well, is it just comes down to you being asking the right questions. So this is where it's your job to dig deeper, to try to find out, depending on where you are, what's your field, and et cetera, in terms of your product, to really start to help the customer figure out what is it that he wants, or maybe give them some scenarios of what they see as, I don't know, what's interesting to them. I don't know, let's say they're buying a shoe, for example, what would make them want to buy the shoe? What is important to them? Where's the deal breaker for them? Is it about the price? Is it comfort for them? So this is where you start looking at your product and digging deeper into more detail about what is it about that product that a customer may or may not want. So it's really up to you to be asking the right questions, and as many questions as possible. Feroz, thoughts here?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, Elena, but let me take a slightly contrarian point of view of what happens when you're not customer centric and how you evolve. And I think that question came up by somebody and said, tell me about your life at Intel. Now, I was with Intel 14 years, right? So I've built a career there. And I'll tell you, Intel was an interesting company because we didn't need to be customer centric, because we always believed that the customer has no clue what they want. Right? I mean, how could you go and ask a customer what kind of a microprocessor do they need? Right? What would they give you? What would they tell you? Right? And for many years, we sold this whole myth of megahertz and gigahertz, and that's the only way we could tell people the goodness or the badness of microprocessors. And ultimately, they ended up in people's laptops. Well, a time came when all that started disappearing, and we said to ourselves, you know what? The race of megahertz and gigahertz will ultimately disappear. The change will be now towards the needs and wants of the customers. So we came up and said, okay, whether you're a physicist smashing an atom, or whether you're a musician smashing a guitar, you still need computing. And computing will take you on both sides. On one hand, you'll make music. On the other hand, you'll create science. And you will still need computers. And for those computers to exist and coexist, you'll need a lot of thinking on the needs and uses of computing power. And when we decided to do that and we talked to people and what they needed, people said, hey, I'd love to have a laptop that lasts for 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day and is wireless. Well, that's how wireless got invented. Because we said, interesting. What does wireless mean? What is Wi-Fi? Wi-Fi was invented by Intel. It was called Home RF. That became Wi-Fi of today. But it started with asking people, why do you care about wirelessness, right? Now that today there's only a single wire in your computer that's power, right? And hoping that in the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be gone, right? So this is the evolution of asking people their wants and desires. But the beginning of how my life started was not about customer centricity at all, because we didn't care. We just said, look, give them the fastest computer in the world and they'll buy it, right? But that runs out of steam after a while. And as any old industry, we need to evolve towards a more customer-centric point of view, because we educate them. And as they get educated, they ask the questions and they have desires. And we then facilitate those desires.
Somebody also asked a question which brought up a thought. Somebody was asking, what about design thinking and B2B? And I'm going to answer that question, Feroz, maybe you can too. I think an important point, what we see right now in big corporations, and Feroz and I talked about it when we were preparing for this, and the realization is that big corporations have a harder time being very innovative, especially when like organizations that have been in place for years and years, like the dinosaurs of this world, like, I don't know, the Siemens and I'm not to name names, but the big ones essentially. When an organization has been doing things a certain way for a long time, it's hard to create change in organizations. And this is where you see many consultancies, many companies, I think GE is one of them, that are actually investing in startups or buying startups, because startups have the ability to be very quick, agile, creative, and experiment. And they're coming up with new ways of doing things continuously. And I think that's important, because there's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs, because big organizations lack that, for better or for worse, in many cases. In terms of B2B, design thinking B2B, I assume you're asking about how do you identify the problem, and how do you do the dig into the problem when you're dealing with B2B. Here I would say, and this is what we do with Bessern, is we're a B2B company. And our main thing is we focus on what is the pain of the customer? What is the actual pain of the customer? And then we go to validate, is our assumption about their pain valid? By asking them a series of questions of, when it comes to their talent development, what is the biggest pain? We assume, based on research that we've done, that it's X, Y, and Z. And we bring this to them to truly understand if that is something similar that they're experiencing. And essentially, it's just about being able to ask the right questions to your customers, regardless whether it's B2B, B2C. At the end of the day, it's your customer, and you need to be able to dig deeper into the questions.
I agree with you, Elena, and in some cases it can be fairly challenging, right? I mean, it's not about just asking customers, but asking the right questions as well, right? And sitting back and listening and extrapolating, and then asking more and digging a bit deeper, because I think that yields the benefits to you when you design something. The other thing is that, can innovation be applied too early? I think there was a question. And can it alienate customers? Of course it can. Innovation can be applied early. And there are many instances in life where that has happened, where you can potentially alienate customers. But I think I'll give you an example of why early becomes late. And the way it happens is that you always have to have learning systems built in. And what I mean by learning systems is that, and as I showed you the picture towards the end had this circular thing, right? It's a prototype that gets launched, you learn and you relaunch and you relaunch and you relaunch. What happens when you don't do that is, when you throw out innovation that does not have this learning component, that's where you ask for failure, because that static world doesn't exist anymore. It has to be dynamic. So whether you're putting together a voice recognition software, or whether you're putting together a RPT or whatever, a robotic process in your system, it has to be a learning system. And that's when you see Alexa and Siri, and you see that every year that passes by, they get better and better and better, right? And the reason they do is because they have vast troves of information that they analyze, synthesize, and action on every hour, every minute, every second, and learn from it. So it's important that that last iterative part is not missing in your process. It's an important process. You know, fast fail, deploy something, iterate. It's okay, right? But if you miss that and you just say, oh, my innovation's over, I put it out there, my product is done. Well, there is no product that is ever done. So it's important when you do design thinking that there is this closed loop of rethink.
Somebody asked a question. There's quite a few questions. One I'd like to address is, somebody asked, in a customer survey, how would one ensure that the right sample is taken? I think an important thing to consider here is, if you're trying to gather information from your customer, sometimes survey might not be the best way. So you really have to identify what is the best way for you to collect this information from that customer, that client. Is it creating a focus group? Is it a massive survey you need to do? Is it actually going and observing that customer in that specific environment? So for example, I don't know if you're looking to improve the way a pharmacy works and where the products are located. Should you go into a pharmacy and maybe observe the customers as they move around the shop to see where they go first? What are their touch points? Right? So survey might not always be the best case, just FYI. If you are going to do a survey, surveys are not great always, but if you do one, make sure that you're asking the right questions. So this is where, again, the way you state the question, should it be an open-ended question? Do you want to give a yes or no? So the structure of the format of the survey is important. And again, getting your tailored audience. So making sure that your survey is going to the right customer based on the product, etc., that you're developing. So I just wanted to address that. Feroz, there's quite a few questions. So
let me just look through.
I guess, yeah. Pick one.
Well, I mean, look, let's talk about Apple, right? Because when the innovation of Apple started, I was in Santa Clara working in Intel. And the question is, what about pioneers like Steve Jobs? Well, we have to go back and see, what is the main innovation that Apple created? And if you think about the times, and many of you who are younger probably don't remember this, the system of record at that time was something called a BlackBerry. And BlackBerry was this amazing tool where you could get your emails and you have a keyboard and you press the keyboard and write emails back to each other, right? And the only major innovation that Steve Jobs came up with was the fact that he said, you know what? As a customer, that keyboard should be providing you the right thing at the right time. And that keyboard should be malleable and shaped according to the uses and need of the customer. And what did it become? It became touch. Because today, your Apple iPhone has a keyboard. It has an app. And when you want to interact in the app, a keyboard comes up and you type on it, and then the keyboard disappears, right? In the old days, when we were using BlackBerry, the keyboard was a physical keyboard. It didn't disappear. It just was there all the time. And the disappearance of the keyboard and coming in and out according to need was a customer centricity, because the customer wanted that. He said, I don't care. I've got all this real estate. I want to be able to use it the way I want to use it, which is when I need a keyboard, I need a keyboard. When I want to play a game, I want to play a game. When I want to watch a video, I want to watch video, right? So that's what customer centricity is from the minds of these brilliant people, because they're saying that now technology has arrived and I want to do something that the customers want, and that's what they wanted. So those are some of the ideas that that these people had. Over and beyond that, the second biggest, well, the biggest toll gate in the world, App Store, was another innovation, right? And the innovation was very simple. It said that, look, I am the provider of an environment where you are the creator. That's exactly all it was. It was basically going to the customer and saying, you are the creator. You want to create an app? Dump it in there. I'm just going to give you an environment to publish it, right? And the result of that was people started creating, right? When the first iPad came out, the first thing that somebody said was, who would want to use an iPad to make phone calls? Right? They never thought that iPad was just a blank slate and you could do whatever you want with it, because it was not about Apple designing product. Apple just put in 3 or 4 products just to entice people. Everything on the App Store was made by customers, ultimately, right? And even today. So these are some of the ideas that people use to build products and design products, right? And it's a to and fro. One day you're a customer, Elena, the other day I'm a customer, right? One day you're a designer, the second day I'm a designer, right? And that movement of creativity is extremely important. Who's to say that our customers are not also designers of our products, right? And that's exactly what design thinking is all about, right? So yeah, so I mean, I just leave that with a thought. I mean, just to step back and as you build your lives and build your new companies and look at gaps, the only message we're giving you is that, think of it from a perspective of how you would use something, how you would feel about it. And when you start with that and then you pull the customers, anything you do, the outcome will be brilliant.
Excellent questions, guys. And we have so many more coming in. I'm just mindful of the time because I know also that organizers have some things that they want to share with you. So I encourage you to maybe connect with us on LinkedIn, connect with us, look us up, follow up with questions. We're not able to get to all of them today, but it's great that you have so many questions, and thank you so much for your attention. Fiza, if you guys are wanting to take over, I do have to log on, so I'm so sorry, guys. I have another presentation I have to hop over in just a few minutes. But Feroz, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate the conversation, and thanks again to Thai Dubai for organizing this, and to everybody who's listening. Appreciate it. Fiza, Feroz, have a lovely day. Bye bye, everyone. Let's touch base on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Elena. I'll stay a little bit longer if you don't mind. Yeah.
So Feroz, we're doing the event survey. If you do want to answer any more questions, up to you.
Let me just see if there's any additional questions I can add value to. There were some questions around, do you employ ethnographic methods and observation methods? It all depends, right? Depends on what you're catering for, right? And yes, the answer should be yes to both, because there are certain cultural elements that cannot go away, right? And culture is something that will, eat any kind of system for lunch, right? Because ultimately, the biggest predictor of your success of your product is also being able to fit within the culture of the society and the ethnographic world. So yes, absolutely, it should be employed. And also, observation is about how people use things, right? And how people actually navigate through things. There are many tools. So in e-commerce, you use, heat maps. In storefronts, you use trackers. Bluetooth trackers all the way down to people counters. In other areas, you use many other systems to be able to monitor and manage and observe how people react. So absolutely, all of those things matter. It's not just about asking questions. It's not about verbal stuff. It's also about physical stuff. How do people interact? A very simple example I'll give you that has stood the test of time is Lego, right? If you look at children, how they create and play with Lego is an incredible sight, right? Because you see them create something out of nothing, and you go, how did it happen? It's just a few blocks. That's all they are, all right? But that simplicity creates sparks innovation and ideas, and kids make whatever they want to make with it. So these are observational methods you use to be able to build products. And I don't think anybody in the world has been ever able to copy Lego, right? It's such an amazing product. I'm going to pass you back to the team. I think they have something to talk about with respect to the Thai challenge as a closing remark, and then I'll bid you all farewell.
So yes, Feroz, that's it from our side. We've done the poll and we've gotten really good results. A lot of the audience enjoyed the panel and the masterclass from the both of you today. They've taken immense feedback. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Elena too. I know she's left, but thank you so much for giving us your valuable opinion and your feedback. And thank you so much for taking our time for this.